We're going to get started in just about 2 minutes. Folks would take their seats. All right, we have two presentations from the administration today, and they're probably going to be not exactly brief. So I want to get started. And President Melendez said he'd be running a few minutes late, so we're going to get started. And I'd ask the Deputy Clerk to please call the roll of the Budget, Finance, and Government Committee.
Councilmember Gruber?
Here.
Councilmember Martin?
Here.
Councilmember Monroe?
Here.
Vice President Harris?
Here.
And President Melendez will be joining us shortly.
Thanks, and let the record show we are joined by the rest of our colleagues, save Councilmember Lightfoot. So we have two presentations today, one on the bus arm cameras legislation and the other on the operation and management of the Blue Cross Arena, which is coming to us for a vote in this committee. I've asked the administration, and thank you to the Deputy Mayor for organizing this. I've asked the administration to present on both of these. We're going to start with the BCA. We've had some conversations about this in work sessions and PNCs in the last several months, so hopefully none of this comes as too much of a surprise, but wanted to make sure that we could have a conversation, ask some questions, and have it on the public record so that the community can listen as well. So with that being said, Deputy Mayor, I turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Chair Gruber, and good afternoon, everybody. Pleased to bring this legislation before BFG this afternoon to appoint a new operator to run day-to-day operations at Blue Cross Arena. I think fair to say all of us have fond memories and look forward to future experiences, attending a hockey game at the arena, a concert, or a graduation. But as we look ahead, I think we want to make sure that we are programming the arena in such a way that our residents and visitors aren't only seeing a hopeful Calder Cup champion hockey team on the ice, but also have the opportunity to experience a wide array of programming, including concerts and other events that might meet with their interests. As we move to a new operator, should Council in the next couple weeks approve this legislation, concurrent with the end of the hockey season that begins tomorrow night at 7:05 p.m., I want to offer my sincere thanks to our arena operator for the past several years, RA LLC, which is really affiliated with the Sabres organization. That team have been great partners. We really appreciate their work and the great relationship that we have been able to build with them over the last several years. And to get us to this point, I'd also like to thank the cross-departmental team that led the RFP and evaluation process, comprised of members of the Law Department, Department of Environmental Services, and the Office of Management and Budget. And with that, I will turn it over to our Budget Director, Suzanne Warren, who along with Brian Liberti will take us through their presentation.
Thank you and good afternoon. I would like to start with just a little bit of a background and what our process looked like from the start, just to make sure everybody has an understanding. Rochester Arena had provided notification to the city that they wanted to exercise their right to opt out of the license agreement back in April. So the City of Rochester issued a RFP for the operation and management of the BCA. We received 4 proposals during that process. They were from Rochester Arena, Venue Works, Oakview Group, and the Sports Facilities Companies. As Deputy Mayor indicated, the proposals were reviewed by representatives from Environmental Services, the Law Department, and the Office of Management and Budget. In addition to reviewing the written proposals, we conducted formal interviews of all 4 respondents. Those proposals were ranked by the review committee on the basis of the quality of proposal, prior experience with similar venues, proposed compensation, and the operational plan. Venue Works had scored the highest out of the 4 respondents of the proposals we reviewed. Venue Works is an employee stock ownership trust company based in Iowa, which employs more than 3,500 staff. Venue Works has experience in similar sized markets to Rochester, and the review team felt that Rochester would integrate well. Some of the similar sized facilities that they do operate is the Ford Center in Indiana, the Toyota Center in Washington, the Alliant Energy Powerhouse in Iowa, and the Hartman Arena in Kansas. The Ford Center in Indiana is probably the most comparable to the BCA. It has 11,000 seats to it, and they host 36 events each year at that facility. Events like the Harlem Globetrotters. Oh, wrong one. Yep. There we go. Events like the Harlem Globetrotters, comedians like Jeff Dunham, and bands like Disturbed or ZZ Tops. They operate 20 other facilities of like-size markets, 11 of which are arenas. We conducted references from some of the facilities that they do. All had very glowing remarks for Venue Works. The financial input from the proposal from Venue Works, their pro forma financials were very realistic and incentive-based, as opposed to a base management fee, and they were very eager to participate in the operation of Blue Cross Arena, which leads us to believe that the arena definitely has some greater anticipated profitability. The term would consist of a 5-year term with 2 additional 5-year extensions, so a total of 15 years. Venue Works would receive 8% of the gross food, beverage, and catering revenue, and also an attendance incentive of 50 cents per attendee for all events, excluding the main tenants, which include hockey and lacrosse. And Venue Works also had proposed a initial investment of $1,250,000. Mostly that will consist of food and beverage upgrades to the concession stands, different food and beverage type offerings. For that investment would be forgiven by the city in equal installments over the course of 10 years. All financials related to the operation of the arena would be available to the city at any time with unlimited access to all of the records and supporting documentation related to the facility. And Venue Works also indicated that they felt that the arena was currently underutilized and had numerous examples of bringing in new entertainment, food and beverage options, and to increase revenue. We recently had a meeting yesterday with Rochester Arena and Venue Works to start talking about the transition plan, and Venue Works is already working on booking shows and events for when they take over at the end of the hockey season. Part of our review process for selecting a different vendor other than RA comes with some associated risks. Some of these, I think, we after talking with Venue Works and reviewing their proposal, not much of a risk anymore, but certainly always a risk for the Amerks to move to an alternate location if RA wasn't selected in recent conversations. I don't think any of us on the review team feel that this is a real possibility at this time, but transitioning to a new operator also may result in some initial ramp-up costs as we transfer from current operator to a new operator until the arena is fully operational under Venue Works control. The current terms of the current concessions, which is under Delaware North, which runs through 2026, could impact some of the financial proposal from Venue Works. Venue Works currently conducts all of their food and beverage sales in-house, so they don't use an outside vendor. So there will be some transition period between the Delaware North contract and when Venue Works takes over. And of course, given that this is a performance-based proposal, the financial success or failure will be determined on what happens at the arena. But we feel confident that a lot of those risks are reduced because they are going to be a performance-based operator for us. So the better that they do, the better the city of Rochester will do. And with that, that concludes the presentation. If anybody has any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have to say in advance that I'm very bullish on the proposal. I think it's on the recommendation. It sounds like Venue Works is a really good fit for this, but I do have a number of questions, and it's likely that I'm going to hold this today in committee with the hope of getting it through the full council meeting next week. But we'll see how the rest of the council feels and the questions they may have. I just want to ask a couple of questions. So pardon me, colleagues, I'm going to go through a couple, and then I'll pass it over to folks who also have questions. The 5 years with 2 5-year terms, that seems like a very lengthy commitment, probably a little bit meatier than most contracts like this. I guess, which probably is a good thing. It shows that they want to be invested in the place. My big question is what kind of options we have to get out of the contract. If somehow, some way, this Midwest company can't swing it here in the Northeast, and 2 years from now they're showing massive deficits, what's our ability to get out of this contract?
So we've still got a contract to negotiate, obviously, right? But that's one of the concerns that we're going to have is how we get out of this contract. I think one of the reasons we're looking at 5-year terms with 5-year extensions is because although that seems like a long time compared to a consultant who's doing a 1-year evaluation and report for us, for this sort of essentially license agreement, it's really not that long term, particularly when they're investing $1.2 million into the facility. So we're of course going to write the contract in a way so that if there are events of default or if we are spending too much city money to keep this afloat because they just can't manage it, that we'll have a way out of this. Certainly, as the deputy mayor said, our experience with Rochester Arena has been great. They've been great stewards of the facility. They've been great partners with the city. But we had SMG before that, and they were not performing that well, and those lessons are not lost. And so we'll be bearing that in mind as we negotiate those issues.
Yeah, so can we talk about I don't want to get into the details of SMG, but part of the functional difference between the SMG contract, the RA contract, and now back to this one is that it's performance-based, right? Essentially, the RA one was not performance-based at all. What is built into this that is stronger than the SMG contract? I'm assuming that the answer is there's no base management fee, and there was for SMG, but I don't have the SMG contract in front of me.
I think if you were to go back through legislation for SMG, there were multiple amendments to their contract which continued to actually push more and more of the subsidy to the city, which I think you kind of saw in the most recent amendment with the RA contract as well, in terms of the utilities. My thought at this point is it's really performance-based for Venue Works. So they're going to have to make it perform to make any money. And I would anticipate in terms of the ticket surcharge revenue is definitely higher than what it was under SMG. I think SMG, without there were some issues there in terms of management between the city and SMG overall.
Did they have a base management fee? Do you recall, SMG?
No,
They didn't.
no. Yeah, it was weird. They were actually paying us to operate, I believe. Same thing. So RA was paying an annual lease. If you go back and look at that legislation, it was $60,000. It's definitely going to be a different situation with VenueWorks because of the fact that they are moving. The financial risk will be contained within, I believe, the separate LLC that they will set up. So there could be a potential for us to put some working capital out front just to get them going. That's not going to happen this fiscal year, so I would anticipate being able to show you a better picture with the proposed budget that comes out next May.
Okay. I guess I'll just ask a couple of related questions financially. The 8% of gross food and beverage and catering, how does that compare to previous contracts?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay, I'm fine with these coming back in writing, no problem. I have a question about the 1.25 in capital. So the legislation references it 2 times, but I could pull up the exact language. I was a little bit confused. The first time it says it says VenueWorks will invest up to 1.25 for capital improvements to be forgiven by the city in equal installments over 10 years. The second time it says basically that it's at no cost to the city if they stay for 10 years. I read those things as a little bit different. They're putting out the money. They're if they sign a contract, they're coming with 1.25 off the bat.
Correct.
And essentially, if they don't get a renewal of the contract, we have to pay them some of that back. But if they do, it's forgiven. Is that right?
And I wouldn't say forgiven. So we're going to be reimbursing them on that 10-year schedule as part of the agreement. So they come in and implement $1.25 million worth of renovations in food and beverage. So as the agreement progresses, during the first 5 years, half of that will be paid back, deducted from the operation itself and reimbursed to VenueWorks. Does that make sense?
So they're not actually putting in 1.25.
Well,
they're borrowing 1.25.
In essence, yes.
So when the legislation says, at the last paragraph, it says primarily in food service support areas of $1.25 million at no cost to the city if the agreement extends for 10 years, that's not really true. We would still be paying the 1.25
over 10 years.
Okay, I mean I certainly would want that to be that would be something that I think should be amended in the transmittal at the very least, because that
is that in the transmittal or
the
legislation?
The transmittal says, the last paragraph says, as mentioned earlier, VenueWorks has committed to a capital investment primarily in food service support areas of $1.25 million at no cost to the city if the agreement term extends for 10 years. But that's not a true statement. I just want to make sure before I say that with certainty, I'm asking.
So we'll work through that with budget and get back to council with formal correct language in both the legislation and transmittal so that they're consistent.
Okay, thanks. The other major financial questions I have, can someone just give me a little bit of explanation of what the $934,400 in property tax subsidy is? That's the War Memorial Fund? That's what we tax for the War Memorial every year?
No, so that is the net property tax subsidy after you consider all the revenue that's coming in. So at the moment, there's revenue coming from RA for facility rental, the ticket surcharge, utility reimbursement, the naming rights from Excelis or Blue Cross, some premium and interest revenue, and the hotel motel tax. When you take all that revenue and then net out the expenses that the city is responsible for, so from cash capital investments that we're making, any debt service payments, small expense for, I won't say it's small, but for insurance coverage, different utilities of that nature, that net cost or net contribution from property taxes, the $934,400.
Got it. So that's what we have been subsidizing it, all expenses in under the last several years under RA.
Correct.
Is that an average, or is that just what last year was?
It's actually been the same amount for the past 2 years. If you go to the operating budget in the environmental services section in buildings and parks, there's a section, Blue Cross Arena at the War Memorial, and you can see the breakdown of what that $934,400 represents.
Got it. And so the point of in the at least in the transmittal is that 934.4, we're not expecting that to change at all, at least right now. That's the expectation.
Correct. Right.
Okay.
Especially because I believe Rochester Arena RA will be managing the arena through April 30th. So in essence, most of the terms will remain the same for all but 2 months out of this fiscal year.
Got it. And we really don't know what the potential impact may be for when they have a full operating year under their belt.
Correct.
Because it all depends on how they perform, how many concerts come in, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But again, the theory, the philosophy of the administration is they are only paid by making money, so they're going to do their best to make money, and they have 4 arenas where they make money.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 other financial questions. The $275 that they get in subsidy for all tickets with a face value of $6 or more, how does that compare? Similar to the 8% of gross, that might be something to get back in writing.
Yep. So the ticket surcharge is the same as what it currently is under RA.
Got it.
And one of the compensation items that VenueWorks will receive is this 50-cent attendance fee, and we determined it would be best to take the $275, indicate that 50 cents goes back to VenueWorks, and the rest comes to the city, and that's what comes back and reduces our property tax subsidy.
So they charge $20 for a ticket. They get the $275 as the vendor's always been getting, but they also get 50 additional cents per person.
Yes.
Because we want them to bring as many people as they can.
Which I believe the current terms for RA is they get half that.
Okay. And then utilities. I haven't figured out where utilities factor into all this. So that was the big thing with RA. Where does utilities factor in with this proposal?
So I believe that the utilities need to remain in the city's name in order to retain our sales tax exempt status, so that there's no sales tax being charged on the utility bills. I would anticipate that the city will continue to pay those and be reimbursed from VenueWorks out of the operation of the arena account.
So that will be something that's finalized in contract negotiations.
Yes.
But
correct.
have there been conversations? Are they expecting to pay for utilities in full?
That was in their proposal. Yes.
Okay. And finally, just a thought. There's a lot of talk about their pro forma and how successful they've been in other places. If there is a way to share the pro forma with us, or if there is a redacted or a simplified version of the pro forma that doesn't give away anything they wouldn't want to share, I think it'd be useful for us to see that as well. When you come back with some written answers, please. Any other council members? Sorry for asking so many questions. I just had a bunch. Any other council members have questions that they'd like to ask? Councilmember Monroe and then Martin.
The question I have, I'm sorry, but I am going back to the 1.25 million and the forgiving it. So is VenueWorks putting up their own 1.25 million to make all of those kitchen type improvements? And then what we're doing is over the course of 10 years, we would be forgiving that in that we would take less revenue?
Correct.
Thank you.
In the points received by firm section of the RFP consultants selection summary, what is the highest amount of points that people can receive in each section?
We'd have to get back to you on that. It's we have it available.
Absolutely. Thank you. And can we see the previous contract with RA and the current draft contract? I see that's also like one of the evaluation criteria. For me, that would be helpful in understanding the differences in these two contracts and being able to understand what's going on.
Yep, thanks for that question. We'd be happy to provide the RA contract. There is no draft contract at this point with VenueWorks. If this legislation is approved, we would then begin the contract negotiation process and work through that.
Okay, so what does draft contract mean in this selection process summary? It was one of the things I understand was submitted and received some points.
We'll get back to you, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thanks. Again, I think to me the argument makes sense that VenueWorks has proven to be successful at other places, that they work in similar markets, and if they're successful here, we're all successful. This is obviously just a very, very big decision. We want to see this place work as well as you all do, and I think just getting some of those questions back, understanding the financial impact, and hopefully we can vote it out in October. But thank you very much for the presentation.
Yep, just one more point relative to the April 30th, 2025 date. So that is lined up with the end of the hockey season, at least the regular season. If the team were to make the playoffs, certainly.
When?
What's that?
When the team makes the
Sorry.
playoffs.
When, to be clear, when the team makes the playoffs and wins the Calder Cup, we would certainly be open to a conversation to address the transition date so that doesn't happen until all hockey playing is done and the cup is hoisted on the ice.
Sounds good. Thank you very much for this. We will, I'm sure that Jen and James will be back in touch with the specific questions we'd like to follow it up in writing. And we will turn it now over to another very exciting piece of legislation, introductory number 412 and 413. The administration will be presenting on the school bus stop arm enforcement.
Great. So I'm very pleased that we've reached the point to bring forth. There's no none of what I have to say tracks the slides. So I'll. Thanks. As I said, very pleased to bring forth two pieces of legislation today that allow bus stop arm cameras to be installed on yellow school buses transporting RCSD students, and effectuate a local law that allows fines to be levied in instances where motorists pass school buses with that stop arm extended and red lights flashing in violation of state law and soon to be local law if council should vote in that way. Patrick Beath and I will take you through highlights of the legislation, but before I do that, I want to express my thanks to the Law and Finance Departments, as well as DES, OMB, and the Mayor's Chief of Staff for their work in bringing us to this point, specifically in gathering information around how all this will work and what others are doing across the state. I also want to thank Council for your consistent, ardent support of this initiative, with special thanks to Councilmember Monroe for your advocacy and sharing your personal experience, President Melendez, Chair Gruber, given the tie-in of bus patrol with our broader Vision Zero initiative, and all of you for the many ways in which I know you're supportive of pedestrian safety. As many of you may know, our neighbors 60 miles to the west just went live with their bus patrol initiative on October 1st after a July 1 through September 30th warning period where warning letters were issued but no fines were levied. During that time, which covered summer school and the first month of the current school year, approximately 2,000 drivers received warning letters. Buffalo's Traffic Violations Agency has been extremely helpful to us in sharing information on lessons learned over the past year, and we'll continue to be in touch with them over the next year on lessons learned and pitfalls to avoid. And so now on to the presentation. Next slide. So again, just to recap, the purpose of the legislation is twofold. One, to enhance the safety of our students in the city of Rochester by installing the school bus stop arm cameras on yellow buses that transport students that allows us, if cars pass, when the stop arm is extended and the red lights are flashing, to impose a monetary liability in those circumstances. And as I mentioned, also to establish the local law that's aligned with the state law in this subject matter area. Next slide. Wow, great. We are a dynamic duo. So why are we doing this? So this statistic was amazing to me, but unfortunately not surprising, that across the state there are an estimated 50,000 motorists that pass stopped school buses with red lights flashing each school day. That is incredibly unfortunate, and the risk that that poses to our students who are, boarding a bus, or more likely as they're getting off a bus and have to cross the street, that is just unconscionable. Partnering with Bus Patrol and the RCSD, in doing that, we can make a difference and have a penalty in place that we hope is a deterrent, right? That somebody does this once and doesn't do it again, in the meantime keeps our students safe. And based on information that we received from Bus Patrol, and also just in looking at other information out there, the repeat offenses, once someone has been cited, are pretty low. So this tends to be a pretty effective tool.
So in addition to passing a local law, establishing the local stop arm program, we have to enter into 2 key agreements to get this work done. One is with Bus Patrol America LLC. That's a part of the legislation that you have before you today. Bus Patrol would be responsible for providing the cameras, installing them on the buses, making sure they're functioning properly, servicing them. They're responsible for the software, for preliminary review of any camera video or photography showing the car passing the stop arm, and for general administration of the program. We would also have to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the school district to authorize Bus Patrol to go ahead and put those cameras on the stop arms. And the school district, as you may know, has a small fleet of their own buses, and they also contract with 3 other vendors for the majority of their buses. And so we would have to work with all of their vendors, but the agreement we would have would be primarily with the district. This is not a criminal penalty. It is a civil penalty to the owner of a vehicle that passes the stop arm. So we're talking about fines here. The fines range from $250 to $300, depending on how many times a vehicle has crossed the stop arm within an 18-month period. So your first time is $250, second time in 18 months is $275, third time is $300. Can increase more thereafter by $25, but as the deputy mayor said, the hope is that somebody does this once and they never do this again. City is responsible for viewing the video footage. As I said, Bus Patrol is going to take a first pass at any video footage, but the city will have an employee who reviews the footage as well to ensure that there's a violation before a notice of liability is sent to the owner of the vehicle. The notice of liability is essentially a ticket. It tells the owner that they violated this law, that we have the camera footage, and then they would contest the notice of liability in the traffic violation agencies. All of the costs for the program do come from program revenue, and the program is therefore 100% violator funded with no cost to city taxpayers. Which brings us to finances. Bus Patrol is paid out of the revenues generated by the system. So they would take 60% of the gross revenue, and that's intended to compensate for essentially all of Bus Patrol's actual costs. That includes the equipment that's installed and maintained, back-end software, initial review of the violations, issuance of notice of violation or liability, preparation of reports to the state legislature, there's annual reporting required, training of city and school district personnel, assisting with information, media campaigns, and providing support as otherwise necessary.
Great, so on to reporting. My first reaction when I saw that at a minimum there'd be annual reporting available was that's not frequent enough. And so there is reporting required under state law, and that provides information on basically where violations are happening, what revenues have been collected, that sort of thing. but there's also an opportunity to have a much more frequent cadence that we'll work through with bus patrol as we work on implementation. I would say with regard to reporting, the reporting that we have access to, so if it's monthly or quarterly, whatever it might be, we would plan to provide that to council. I know you're very interested, all of you, to know how this is going once it gets off the ground, as are we. So we would certainly provide that in the normal course. And then the next steps. So this is the road that we have ahead. You'll vote on the two pieces of legislation, presuming that they make it out of committee in a couple of weeks. The RCSD board also needs to vote on this to opt in, and we hope that that happens shortly thereafter the council vote. Then we go through the process of executing contracts. We'll then develop a communications plan and how we'll reach out to the community to communicate what we're doing and what the impacts will be. The cameras will be installed on the school buses over the course of the spring and summer. We, like Buffalo, would do a soft launch with a warning period, and then we would look to go live on this in September or back to school 2025. We have shared this timeline with Bus Patrol, and they are comfortable that all of these dates where it gets to anything that they might have to do based on their experience, that they're able to meet those at this time. So with that is the last of our presentation, and I'm happy to open it up to questions, Chair Gruber.
Thanks. I have a couple of questions, and then I'm sure most people do too, so I'll start down the line at Vice President Harris and move down. Just a couple questions from me. Is Bus Patrol the sole vendor in New York State who does this?
There are other vendors. We did not RFP this because we are essentially piggybacking on the terms that Monroe County has. Monroe County undertook an RFP process and chose Bus Patrol. So Bus Patrol has been doing this for the county and the surrounding school districts for some time now. And as the Deputy Mayor indicated, Bus Patrol is also working with Buffalo on their project.
Great. And the financial situation there's the same. They just get 60% of revenues to make everything work.
The model that we're proposing is based on the Monroe County contract. Yep.
Okay. You talked about a staff person to review it on the city end. So in theory, personnel is going to be one new hire for this, and will that person be in the Traffic Violations Bureau?
So we believe they would be in TVA as far as the number. One is what has been suggested, but as we operationalize, I think given council's interest in this initiative, we'll certainly provide updates as to how that is going, and for any personnel adjustments that we would need to make, you would see those in the proposed 2025-26 budget.
And the theory that this is all violator it's funded by violations is that the 40% that we would get back would more than make up for that person's salary.
That is the theory, yes.
And it's been borne out pretty true by Monroe County.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And that's my final two questions. I guess the first one's a comment. I have seen at times the bus arms that a school bus has forgotten to put it down. I've seen a school bus drive for a lengthy period of time with the bus arm up before. In a situation like that, I'm assuming that there's not necessarily a plea for this because you have two people watching the video, Bus Patrol and our staff, and that ticket would never even get written. Is that correct?
Chair Gruber, I feel like my brother-in-law put you up to this question. That was one of the many questions that I received from him when this became public. But in any case, all kidding aside, yes, that's the idea. So instead of having to plead down, certainly because there's that two-step review, that is likely to mitigate any of those concerns.
And the mechanism, if something fell through the cracks where someone said, this is absurd, I did not go through a stopped bus arm being put out, they could still plea it down at the TVA? Or go fight it at the TVA if they wanted to?
Yep, the prosecutor at the TVA would have the same discretion they do with any charge. So if somebody came in and said, look, you're looking at this video all wrong, this is what happened, the prosecutor would have the ability to negotiate a plea. And if that were to happen, the prosecutor says, no, you've got it all wrong, you're clearly in violation of the law, then the person has a right to a full adjudication and a hearing in front of a judicial hearing officer.
Got it. Last question is about revenues and where they go. So I read recently that there's already been about 3,000 written in Monroe County. 3,000 at $250 a clip would, even with 60% being gone, would be $300,000 coming into the city. So that's more than paying for that one person. What is our plan for the revenues?
So I think our first step would be to see what net revenue we end up collecting in a year. Obviously, to make sure that that covers all the costs associated with the program. And then at that time, we would make a decision as to what we would do with those funds. Certainly, I think an argument could be made that we would want to put those funds into a like purpose along the lines of what this initiative is trying to do.
So will it be held in a separate fund? I mean, how will we be able to maintain the accounting of this very concretely?
Yeah, we'll get back to you in writing on that nuance, but it will be tracked separately.
Okay. But thank you very much. Vice President Harris?
Thank you, Councilmember Gruber. This is exciting. This is good for safety for our city, and I support it in concept. And, I support what you guys have here. I just got a couple of questions. This plan, does that include charter schools? I know you mentioned that it includes all buses in the city, but does that include charter schools as well?
It's an interesting question. We've only had discussions about the city school district, so we'll have to get back to you on that.
Thank you. It would be really nice to see that it did include charter schools, since our revenue, I guess, our dollars does cover their transportation, if I may. And then I would also like to ask, I saw that you have in here that you're planning to do a communication plan and community outreach. I would urge you guys to do some PSAs to kind of remind people about, the circumstances where you have to stop, because there's some nuances of the laws where people are really not sure, especially when the kids are boarding the bus and there's like a double line or a line or all that stuff. So just some of that would be nice to see go out with picturometry, to show that thing, just a suggestion. And finally, I saw that you said all city school buses, just confirming, and that'll be it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gruber and Chairman. Just a couple of questions. Of course, I support the safety of our students. I want to just have clarification on a couple of things: process and rollout. So, process in regards to the buses. Are the buses currently yellow buses? Are they contracted with the city, or are they contracted with the Rochester City School District?
Those are all city school district contracts. So
Okay.
that's one of the things we're going to have to work with the district on.
All right. So that leads me to my process question. Because again, it's nothing. I support it, but I want to just deal with this process thing, because in this chamber, when it comes to safety, I'm reminded of a proposal from Councilmember Lupien about a public safety plan for the city school district, and the issue with that was that we were going ahead of the city school district, right? And that the city school district had not voted. So why would we vote ahead if this is really germane to the city school district? So this situation makes me think like that, right? Why are we going ahead? Because I think in next steps, I believe it says the city school district has to vote. So why are we taking on this ahead of the city school district when that's been a major issue for this body in other situations? Why is it different now?
That's a fair question, and we've certainly started discussions with the school district about timing and about doing this, and they are just not yet at a point where they're ready to bring this to the board to move ahead. But we are confident that this is a program that can help improve safety of our streets, safety for our students, and we want to get going now. And of course, we've got negotiation to do with Bus Patrol on that piece of the contract. And Bus Patrol also needs to start gearing up for the actual installations. So we didn't see any reason at this point to delay the city side of this, and we're hopeful that the school district follows quickly our lead.
And I would add, we're bringing this legislation forward because the administration is committed to this initiative.
Can I add something to answer your question, Councilmember Lightfoot? my understanding of it, and maybe you have a different understanding, is that we actually have to authorize this for the district to opt into it. So the county had to authorize it for other school districts to then opt into the bus arm program in their district. So the municipality has to be the first step in this case to be able to authorize the program to exist in the city of Rochester, and then the districts individually would then opt in.
But my understanding is the two pieces of legislation before us is not just the approval of entering in or moving forward with it, but we're also approving the whole project and hiring these people, and we're going a little step further than just giving them opportunity. I just want us to understand and be delicate of the fact of times when we use certain things when it's beneficial to us, right? But we just sat here a few months ago, had a very extensive, very drawn out conversation about who goes first and who's on first, and our position of why we're doing certain things in regards to safety of children. Now, no disrespect to, I'm sure this is a very successful program. I would offer that the difference in this is revenue, is money, as opposed to anything. I'm just going to keep it 100, right? That's the difference. But the piece about safety, now what we do know when it comes to safety of our children in our schools, well, very, very recently with Franklin, we know that there's fights and that there's violence and that these things are happening and are needed. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm sure that thousands of people are passing stop signs, but I'm not seeing the data around the impact that that's having for the safety of our children and our families. But I am seeing data of our children being violently attacked in schools and things of that nature, where things like what Mary was talking about are needed, right? But it was vehemently opposed because of process. But then in this situation, we're foregoing that process, and we're just going to put some cameras on a bus, right? And I'm not against that, but I just want to draw the attention to the fact that we can change process when we want to. That's all I'm saying, right? And
can I interrupt you, really?
And I would rather.
I just want to.
What I'm saying. Go ahead.
There's a factual piece in that the legislation, the resolution that I wanted to put forward was directing the district to do something,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the situation where law approved the form of the legislation, but didn't actually let us know that we weren't legally allowed to direct the district. Whereas this, I think, is different. But I think the content of what you're saying is that we're a little maybe disingenuous about caring about the safety of students when there's revenue involved, and not figuring out how to work with the district around their actual safety.
That's my point. And maybe some nuances around legalities, because I think there was also some discrepancies on that legal piece too that you're talking about. That may not be the best example, but there's been others. There's been other examples where things have kind of been, well, if the school district didn't ask for it, or if the school district didn't do this, or if the school district did this, and we shouldn't be telling this body what to do. We shouldn't be. That's been said over and over again in this instance. And here we have an instance where we're going to be doing something ahead of them. They haven't even voted. They haven't asked for this. They haven't asked us to do this. We haven't gotten any of that, but we're doing it. And again, I'm not against it. I support it and all that kind of stuff. I just want to highlight that. I just want to draw the attention to that, because I think that's important. And I think the community needs to understand that as well, too. I'll move on from that, because that was just a statement. And you answered my question as far as the buses are contracted by the Rochester City School District, and that the city school board has not yet voted on this, correct? Those are my only things I wanted. Rollout. I'll move to rollout, and I'm done. The rollout piece, I heard you say, Deputy Mayor, that in Buffalo, that they gave this huge grace period of time where they allow people to kind of get used to this and get aware of this. What is our rollout going to look like in the event that we pass this and the city school district passes it and everything goes forward? What would our rollout look like? And that could be in writing too, if it doesn't have to.
Nope, I'm happy to answer that. So I think we would apply a similar model in a similar length of time.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Councilmember Lightfoot. I would just add that I would agree with the distinction that Councilmember Lupien drew around us directing the district to do something in the example you gave, and in this one, us authorizing the district, because ultimately it has to be the municipality and the school district. And I can say personally, and I'm sure President Melendez, I know he's had similar conversations, I've had several members of the school board ask specifically for us to move on this so that they could move on it. I think it's a fair point that we don't see any evidence of that, and I would be very happy, President Melendez, I'm curious if it's probably better coming from you, but I think we can and should ask the school board for their opinion on this before we proceed. I think that's a fair thing for Councilmember Lightfoot to put out, although I don't agree with the comparison to the previous public safety plan. Would you be willing to do that, President Melendez, to reach out to President Elliott and ask?
Of course. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lupian?
Yeah, Councilmember Lightfoot, thank you so much for making that highlight. And it is frustrating that this body is very hands-off with the district when it comes to kids' safety, when it's around, public safety in schools and outside of schools, and the fact that we are not, as a district, providing the state-mandated child abuse prevention education that we legally are obligated to do. And we can, as a body, have a lot more role in influencing the city school district, even if we can't legally direct them to do things. But my questions are around the period, similar to Councilmember Lightfoot. We're going to be giving kind of a grace period where we're issuing warnings, and that's about 3 months long. Is that what you're saying?
Approximately, yeah.
Okay. The legislation or the code message mentions signage. That signage is going to be posted where?
We will get those details to you in writing.
It seemed like it was going to be on the roadways, which the buses go on all of the roadways. So it seems like it would be a significant amount of signage when maybe it might be better on the bus.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
Okay.
The intention is not to have a sign on every roadway, that's for sure.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
And then lastly, the fines are going into our general fund, and I would strongly recommend that this body consider directing those dollars to directly benefit children, either to the RCSD itself or some kind of youth programming that would benefit the children instead of just going into our general fund. Thank you.
President Melendez?
No questions right now. Thanks.
Councilmember Martin?
First, I want to say thank you to Councilmember Lightfoot for highlighting the different treatment some of us experience on this body. It's very affirming to hear that from you, especially with how long you've been on council and as a respected leader in our community. So I really appreciate you highlighting that and calling to attention the discrepancy in our experiences done intentionally to certain council members. I do have a few questions regarding the choice to not engage in RFP and choosing to just piggyback on Monroe County. I don't know if that's enough justification as it relates to something as serious and as transformative as this. The intentions of the Monroe County governments may not necessarily align with that of our body, and we don't know that until we see what else is out there. So I do want to offer for consideration actually doing our own RFP process as a city, actually seeing how much it may cost for other institutions who offer this service. And the 60% of our city's revenue going to this out of town, out of state institution. I have a lot of issues with that. You know, it's taking money from our community and using it for whatever. And we get 40% of that, when in fact I do think it should be different, and the investments, the funds we get from the implementation of this program should really be going to youth. So yeah, talk to me more about this piggybacking as justification.
Probably best to provide a response in writing just to address the points that you raised, Councilmember.
Thank you. I do have a few other questions.
Can I just ask Councilmember Martin, sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt you. In addition to responding to that, I'm sure the county had a justification for choosing bus patrol. Any way that you can share that with us would be helpful as well. Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Councilmember Gruber. It mentions that after 90 days the video is destroyed. How is it destroyed? What mechanism does this institution use to do that?
We can find that out and let you know.
So in the case, so I also want to talk about the fee schedule, right? Again, we are piggybacking off the county, but we know that the median income in the surrounding counties are significantly higher than our actual median income within the city. So with the fee schedule of 250 to 300, it does feel pretty high for our city. So again, I would be interested in an analysis that provides more information about what else is out there, what other municipalities are doing. And you mentioned you have some data around that.
We certainly have a pretty good perspective from the city of Buffalo that with specific regard to your question, be happy to provide that. I believe, I will fact check, but I believe that the fine structure that we're proposing here is, if not identical, pretty close to what Buffalo is doing.
Right. And also the median income in Buffalo is higher than ours.
I would have to check that.
So for Chair Gruber, I would like to offer for consideration holding this item till we get some of our questions around the justification for using Monroe County's framework, reading research about what else is out there and whether we could possibly enact this with maybe a lower fine schedule, and also seeing some research around what amount of money set as a fine is actually a deterrent and not a financial burden for a city with our income level.
Thank you. Councilmember Monroe.
So I want to start by pointing out that the state actually passed this law in 2019. In 2022, Monroe County finally passed this law and has enabled the suburbs to opt in and have this safety measure for their children. It is now 2024, at the end of 2024, and the city of Rochester is finally at the point of having this come before council. It is my hope, and in talking with the school district, that they could have something that would come to them possibly at their October 24th meeting, so that we can move this forward, and by 2025, 6 years after the state put this in place, that we will finally have something out there to protect our children. In the midst of all this, in 2021, my son was hit by a car coming off of a school bus that had the red lights on, the bus arm out. There were 2 cars queued up behind it. This was on Dewey Avenue. There was a woman who had just picked up her child from school who decided she didn't have the time or the care to stop for that school bus. And she came around those 2 cars going 40 to 45 miles per hour and hit my son and left. She left my son for what could have been dead in the middle of Dewey Avenue. There was blood and hair in her windshield. And when Monroe Bus Company called me the following day to check up on me and my son, the director was actually in tears because she heard and listened to the video of that and how horrifying the sounds were. Amazingly, my son is okay. Many people stopped to help him. Cars stopped holding up the rest of the traffic so that he could get out of the road. One person followed that car and was on the phone with 911. This woman so knows her way around the law that she went and she pulled up into the backyard of what turned out to be a vacant house. So that person gave the address of that house to the 911 operator in hopes of catching this person who so callously hit my son and left him for what could have been dead in the middle of Dewey Avenue. But it was a vacant house and she went home. And because nobody who was there and who was able to see it were able to distinguish the difference between her and her sister in a lineup, she had no charges brought against her. The police have the car, but the laws aren't strong enough to be able to prove things such as, the fingerprints that are left on the outside of the car, that they match the woman who hit my son, that would be enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she had engaged in a hit and run. Not only city residents drive our streets, and regardless of a person's income, it is incumbent upon them to follow the law. It is incumbent upon them to stop when a school bus has the flashing lights and the arm out. The idea that this would be so much as held in committee after 6 years since this was enabled by New York State, I find deeply troubling. And I would submit, Chair Gruber, that we move forward with it. We know that piggybacking on RFPs as well as bid contracts is a standard way of doing business within municipal governments. It is a way to streamline a process and not have duplicative efforts committed, such that Bus Patrol, the county went through their RFP process, and that was the selection. And yes, I would believe that that entire process would be something that would be able to be shared with this body. But the point is that that is a standard operating procedure. And I greatly encourage my colleagues to vote this out of committee so that we can have a vote at our meeting on the 22nd, and so that the school district can move forward on the 24th, and so that we can actually have this finally before the start of the school year 2025.
Thank you for sharing your story, Councilmember Monroe. Councilmember Patterson.
Again, thank you, Councilmember Monroe, for sharing your story, and we're happy. Or I'll speak for myself. I'm certainly happy that your child is well. So I direct your attention to Introductory 412, Section 61-163, Program Costs. It states that the City of Rochester is responsible for all costs related to the installation operation of this program that the school district might be encumbered with. Do we have some understanding yet of what that cost might be? And let me just add to that a little bit. So the school district is responsible for the transportation of all charter school students in the city of Rochester. So by definition, those are all of our kids too. So it is my belief, unless you can tell us otherwise, that we would have a duty to also make this program cover all of those children too. So I'd like to get that explanation in writing. But can you talk a little bit? And this section also lays out a penalty structure for if we don't cover those costs. So do we have some understanding of what those costs might be? I understand we're counting on the revenue to cover the costs, but there's going to be some upfront costs too, and it seems as though those costs would go through the school district first and then be handed back to us. So what is our plan for that?
So the the plan is that all of those costs, including the upfront costs, would be covered by bus patrol and would come out of the 60% revenue that they're taking. Now, that may mean that they incur costs beyond that revenue flow at the outset, but the agreement would be that they take on those responsibilities and costs. It comes out of their cut.
So somehow, in the course of negotiating that contract, you're going to take care of the language in this section right here, whereby the city of Rochester is not going to be picking up any additional costs, because it's very clear that, you know, the school district's got to get paid, and if the school district doesn't get paid for these costs, then the program actually gets suspended, and, you know, there's some challenges there. So the language, the negotiation of the language is going to go that way?
That's exactly right.
Okay. So, and just a point of information, you know, the legislation lays out the fine structure in this same section. Well, section 61-164A, first time violation, $250. Second time violation, $275, committed with 18 months of the first violation. $300 for a third violation, committed within 18 months of the third violation. I would encourage my colleagues to take a look at trafficsafety.newyork.gov, Operation Safe Stop. And I quote, you know, it's the laws and penalties. The law says it is illegal and very dangerous to pass a stopped school bus when the large red lights located on top of the bus are flashing. Flashing lights mean the bus is picking up or discharging students. You must stop whether you are approaching the school bus from the front or overtaking it from the rear. You must always stop for flashing red lights, even on divided and multi-lane highways and on school grounds. The first time fine for illegally passing a school bus is a $250 to $400 fine, 5 points on your license, and or a possibility of 30 days in jail. Worse yet, the memory of hitting or killing a child may be one you may carry for the rest of your life. Now, farther down, by conviction, it talks about the fine structure also. First time offense, convicted, $250 to $400, up to 30 days in jail. Second conviction within 3 years, $600 to $750 fine, up to 180 days in jail. Third or subsequent conviction within 3 years, $750,000 fine, up to 180 days in jail. I bring this up because there's a time when you worry about the impact of the cost of an action on folks of limited income. And there's a time when you do a thing with the hope that the message will be very clear and very direct to everyone, regardless of who they are driving, that they have a duty and a responsibility to follow the law, full stop, in the discussion, and that there will be some consequence. The challenge with this law, the challenge with this piece of legislation, as detailed by my colleague, was that this is conviction. This requires a higher state of evidence to get a conviction. Our bus camera program, if we choose to opt into it, utilizing the process from the sound of it, promulgated by the state of New York. Let me just stop there. The process we're following, is this a process that is promulgated by the state of New York?
Yes, this is all set forth in state law.
Okay, so the notion that we have to pass it before the school district can pass it is what the state tells us we have to do.
The school district's role is characterized as an opt-in. The school district has to opt into the program. Yes, so we need the program in place first under state law before the school district can opt in.
And the legislation also states that we even though the county has passed this legislation and we are a subordinate entity of the county, we just can't pass on it. We have to act too, because the Rochester City School District is totally contained within the city of Rochester. Is that correct?
That's accurate, yes.
Okay. So we're doing it the way we're doing it because New York State said this is how you have to do it. Is that the proper characterization of this item?
That's a proper characterization.
Okay, thank you. So I, of course, will be supporting this. It is my hope that all of my colleagues would support this. I am certainly not on this committee, but we've waited too long to do this. And there are folks driving by school buses every day. And if we can get those pictures and get those fines on them and get them aware, hopefully we can change that behavior. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes, Councilmember Monroe, first of all, I could see you physically shaking as you were telling that story, and it sounds like a very hard time for you, and you certainly have my sympathies. So I do agree with this legislation. My concern, as my colleagues mentioned, is in the revenue. I think when we are creating policies and practices to mitigate harms, especially when those policies and practices generate revenue, I think it is very important that that revenue be used to benefit those who have been harmed. So the money would need to go back into the community, perhaps even to be used towards some of the recommendations that come from Vice President Harris's childhood poverty report. And if we're talking about childhood safety, there are so many young children, school-age children, who are unhoused, and that is a safety concern. So I do think the revenue needs to go back to the community. And lastly, Councilmember Lightfoot, I have always found you to be fair and impartial, and I appreciate your leadership and grounding us in the importance of fair processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are going to thank you for the presentation.
I do have an additional question.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to clarify, if voted on this month, it's still not going to be implemented till September 2025, right? So there's still a long period between now and implementation.
The timeline as set forth on the slide that I reviewed is the timeline.
Yeah, and I would just say implementation, right? I mean, this is all a variety of implementation, right? So getting signage ready, doing public messaging, doing the warning period, that's all part of the implementation. It's not
absolutely, but the big question around, 6 years since it was introduced by the state, it's still not, the goal is to have the bus cameras and fines for people who run through the bus cameras when the arm is out, right? So that piece is not going to be materially implemented till September 2025, right? I mean, you said the schedule is the schedule. This is the schedule I'm looking at.
That is the schedule, and September 2025 is the full go-live date as planned right now.
Okay, thank you. And finally, with the 6-month period where no fines would be implemented except for warnings, could you... So essentially during that 6-month period after September 2025, when people do violate the law, they will get a warning instead of a fine during that period.
During the warning period, a warning letter will be provided to indicate that there has been a violation.
Okay.
There will be no fine assessed until the full launch date.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, because I don't know that the timeline you were just saying lines up with this slide. Right now the anticipation is that warning letter period, if we want to call it that, would be spring through summer school, and that in the fall of 25, that's when we would start issuing the actual notices of liability. So the warning period wouldn't start in September. It would close, and we would shift to notices of liability in September.
But it's still a 6-month warning period.
We have not determined the duration of the warning period. In Buffalo, it was July 1 through September 30th. I put spring into the early part of the school year through summer school to be illustrative, but it will certainly be sufficient.
Okay. And who is responsible for making that decision? Can council weigh in? Can community members weigh in about that warning period? Since it is a very new thing in our municipality, I do think it's important to have time for education and people to understand the impact before it's fully implemented.
I'll share our thoughts in writing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to the legislation. So thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the robust conversation about bus arm cameras. I am going to take it out of committee today and vote on it. I hope it passes. I will just say that, Deputy Mayor, I fully agree with the last point that Councilmember Smith made. We need to have a plan for the revenues before the revenues kick in. I would like to see a very clear sense of what the accounting is going to be for it prior to our council vote. And again, we won't have any revenues during this fiscal year, so we have plenty of time to work on it. But I'd like to see how the accounting will happen specifically.
Yeah, we'll provide that in writing.
Thank you very much. Instruction number 409, authorizing an agreement relating to the Grow Rochester program. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councilmember Lightfoot. Councilmember Lightfoot, your mic is now on.
Thank you. Sorry about that. She asked me if I would ask this question for her, so I just wanted to put it on the record, and we can get an answer in writing if that's okay. She wanted to know if dyslexia, autism, ADHD screening are included, and if not, why? Why not?
We'll get that in writing.
Any further questions, Councilmember Patterson?
So we've been funding this for a little while. We should have some data and some reports. It's my hope that you can forward those all over to us.
Any further questions? Councilman Martin?
Yeah, my hand has been up each time you look this way, so maybe there needs to be a better way to keep track of whose hands are being raised and the time they're raised. My only question is regarding RFPs. There isn't no RFP justification for this. Could that please be sent in writing?
Any further questions? All right, then I will entertain a motion on 409.
Move it.
It's been moved. I need a second. It's been seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Instruction number 410, authorizing an agreement and supporting the Financial Empowerment Center. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councilman Martin, is that your hand up?
Oh, wow. Yes, it is.
Oh, please ask your question.
Thank you.
Yep.
Look how well that worked. So in the legislation we reviewed yesterday with the agreements with RDDC, ESL, and the city, it named RDDC as a fiduciary. Here, it seems like there might be some similarities, but CCSI is not acting as a fiduciary. So what is the difference, and what is the role of CCSI in passing the grant through and all of that?
Angela, I'll let you take that. Director Rollins.
Yeah, so CCSI is going to just be acting as the pass-through for the funding. So with the banks and the Community Reinvestment Act, the banks can only give these grants to nonprofits. So CCSI will be our nonprofit fiscal sponsor.
Any further questions on 410? If not, I'll take Councilmember Patterson.
Just checking. Wasn't that information actually contained in the transmittal letter? It was the last sentence of it?
I don't have that in front of me, but I do usually include that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I read the transmittal, and that wasn't immediately clear to me. I'm so happy for the opportunity to ask these questions and for your great response.
I will take a motion on 410.
Move it.
It's been moved.
Second.
And seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Instruction number 411, authorizing an amendatory agreement for labor and employment law services. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councilmember Martin.
Thank you. Can you describe the key issues being litigated in this?
Yeah, the need for the additional funding is because of two primary legal issues that we've had 2 3-day hearings on. The first is whether there exists a sharp conflict of interest between the current members of the AFSCME union and the PAB, the individuals in PAB who would be accepted into the AFSCME union if PERB were to grant that application. The second issue is basically about whether it's appropriate to accrete the PAB workers into the AFSCME unit if there's a community of interest between the AFSCME current members and the PAB employees who are looking to be part of that union, or if they're better to go with Workers United.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And do you how much longer do you expect this to be litigated? I understand it's now been over 2 years since the PAB announced their interest in unionizing.
Yeah, the length of this litigation continues to be a surprise to me, but folks have their interest. So I don't expect it to be much longer. The hearings are concluded. The final briefing is complete. So at this point, we're really waiting for a decision from the judge. So I expect that this final infusion will be adequate to see the litigation through to the end.
Thank you. And finally, could you share with council, I understand some of this may be public, just the arguments submitted by Hancock and Estabrook on behalf of the city and the responses by Workers United?
So I can evaluate that and follow up in writing, but what I learned is that unlike a court proceeding, for instance, which is a public proceeding, PERB proceedings are not.
Okay.
So it's not something I can share publicly, but I'll see what I can put into writing, and it may make sense to discuss it at our next PNC that we have with council.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, I'll take a motion on 411.
Move it.
So moved
Second.
and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No, for me, I understand that the PAB would like to be with Workers United, so I do have to support the workers in that decision.
Introduction number 412, a local law establishing a school bus stop arm camera demonstration program. There are 2 disclosures for this item, one from Council Vice President Harris and the other from Councilmember Lupien, as they are both employed by the school district. They're only required to disclose this information and may participate in the discussion and the vote. We've had time for questions, comments, or concerns, so I'll move right to a motion on 412.
Move it.
Move it.
Moved and seconded.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
It's a no for me. I will be supporting it later, but I do have to do my due diligence in researching and further understanding the impact and talking to my constituents.
Motion carries. Introduction number 413, authorizing agreements for implementation and administration of a school bus stop arm enforcement program. Same 2 disclosures. Both are allowed to participate in discussion and vote. We've had discussions, so I'm going to put it right to a motion.
Move it.
Move
Been
it.
moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion, pardon me.
No.
Motion carries. Introduction number 414, authorizing an intermunicipal agreement relating to the acquisition of a parking lot for the World of Inquiry School number 58. There are 2 disclosures for this item, one from Council Vice President Harris, the other from Councilmember Lupien, as they are both employed with the school district. They are only required to disclose this information and may participate in the discussion and the vote. Questions, comments, or concerns? I want to start with just asking specifically about how whatever work is going to be done here relates to Interloop North.
So there's no direct relationship to what's going on here and Interloop North. These particular parcels are not within the footprint of Interloop North. But down the road, I know the district has some, I think, eye on portion of Interloop North or some of the parking, so that there may be a nexus down the road. But for purposes of this legislation, these parcels, no impact.
So essentially right now, it would be parcels that are not in Interloop North. If somehow Interloop North, the world of post-construction parking situation changes, these would be lots that we would automatically get opportunity to get back.
Potentially, yes, we would own these lots. So if the district decided not to use them anymore, we could potentially find a different use.
Like they don't get the opportunity to sell them somehow if they don't want them anymore.
That would have to come with our permission because we own the lots on their behalf.
Great, thank you. Council Vice President?
Yeah, I was just curious. I know that for a while that lot was being used, like when they have East End, like the East End fest they used to have, or anything they have downtown related where there's additional parking, they would allow people to park there for a fee. So I was wondering, what is the plan for that kind of activity? I know you may not have that now, but could you please put that in writing to us when you do get it?
Yeah, I think we can to the extent we know. If the sale goes through, they'll be controlled by the district, even though they'll be owned by us. So that's going to be largely, I think, the district's choice about how they utilize those parks, kind of those parking lots off hours when they don't have a need for them. But to the extent we can provide a response, we will.
Thank you.
Introduction number 414. Any further questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move it.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And finally, introductory number 419, authorizing an agreement for the management and operation of the Blue Cross Arena at the War Memorial. I'm going to hold this with the hope to bring it out when we get a bunch of the financial questions back in writing. And with no further business, that concludes the Business, Finance, and Governance Committee.
We'll give the opportunity for anyone to transition for the public safety. I did see our chief here. I saw him kind of step out for a moment. But I think, is everyone in place? I think, okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. All right, so at this time, I'm going to call the Public Safety Committee to order, and I'll ask the Deputy Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Lightfoot.
Present, ma'am.
Councilmember Gruber.
Here.
Councilmember Lupian. Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Councilmember Monroe.
Here.
Councilmember Patterson.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Vice President Harris.
Here.
President Melendez.
All right, it is customary for our public safety. I just would have a quick moment of silence, not only for just victims and different things of that nature, but also grateful for Hurricane Milton was not as bad as it was anticipated. Gratefully, I know many of us have connections to Florida. Many of us may have family or people that we know or friends or whatnot. Hopefully everyone is well. Hopefully everyone is faring well and surviving due to this hurricane. But just a moment of silence, because there was some losses, not only just from this hurricane, but the one previous, and also for various incidences that we may have had happen since our last meeting. Thank you. Just very quickly, a moment of silence. Thank you. So today's presentation, I've asked for a presentation before we go into the business of the public safety tonight. We're joined, of course, with all of our colleagues. A couple had to step due to previous engagements. But today's presentation is from the GIS Scholars. I am so excited to have these young people with us. They're going to be talking regarding their work around mapping of shootings and homicides in the city of Rochester. In my capacity as chairman and founder of Rock Against Gun Violence Coalition, I have had the pleasure and the opportunity to collaborate with them. Not as much as we're going to be collaborating in the future. They are also going to be speaking at our Rock Against Gun Violence Coalition youth conference coming up this month. I'm grateful to learn more, and I'm grateful for our colleagues and our community, because this, of course, is being streamed on the City Council YouTube page, so our community also can learn more about the research of the GIS Scholars. So I want to honor and respect these young people, as well as those that work, the adults that work with them, Mr. Becker, as well as Miss Alicia Ward, also, who is here. And I want to just ask that you guys would step to the podium. Please tell your name, your school that you go to, and then go into your presentation. Thank you so much for being here. Let's give them a round of applause.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I'm Dwayne Hall. I go to Edison Tech, and I'm in the 11th grade.
Edison in the house.
I go to early college, and I'm an MCC student.
All right.
Good afternoon. I'm Ziona Ferrer. I go to early college and Pendalia High School.
Good afternoon. I'm Isaiah Wood. I go to Vertis High School, and I'm in the 11th grade.
And we are members of a program called Digital Health Navigators. The DHN program was created by University of Rochester, SUNY Attain, and GIS Scholars. Some of the people that made this program are in the crowd right now: Mr. Becker, Mr. Ennis, and also Ms. Ward, and Dr. Sanders. We are located at the Jackson Art Center, where we map crimes using data, public data from the Rochester Police Department portal. Right, we will be showing you a series of maps of shootings and homicides in 2023. And now I'll be handing it off to my colleague, Ziona.
So, as my colleague Dwayne Hall had said, we will be analyzing the maps on the shootings and homicides around the Rochester Public Libraries in 2023. And we would like to utilize these libraries, but sometimes we are not able to because of how much crime rate, like Mr. Council Lightfoot said. There is so much crime rate in the area that we can't utilize public places like libraries, rec centers, or even just sporting events that we want to go to after school. So the correlation between these shootings and homicides in Rochester, New York, as crime rates in the city council continue to rise, we are affected by them daily, whether it's fights at school or just anything within crimes like gangs, and how it affects our fears in just a 5-minute walk. So what I have here on this map is the gray gun icons are the shooting victims, and the blue icons are the homicide victims, and these purple circles are a quarter-mile buffers. So what a quarter-mile buffer is, it's a 5-minute walk, and just think about how you are walking from any public library that you want to utilize, which the worst public library to be near is Lincoln Branch. And we've actually been to Lincoln Branch. We utilize that place, so we know how it is around that area. And it's one of the highest homicide rates and shooting rates in that area. And think that your kid is walking from a place within that 5 to 15 mile radius, and 5 to 15 minute radius, and how all that fear in their body, whether it's anxiety or sadness or scared, or even you can get depressed from going from one place to another because of how you can't go to other places. And what I have here is all of the libraries with the highest amount of crime rate near them. And now I'm gonna present it to my colleague Isaiah.